of the Al-Aws and Al-Khazraj, Usayd bin Khudayr wa Sa'd bin Mu'adh. Now, for those who don't know, typically the Sahaba, the companions of Rasulullah ﷺ, are divided into two broad groups. Al-Muhajirun, those who migrated from Mecca to Medina, and Al-Ansar, those are the supporters, the dwellers of Medina, who received the immigrants from Mecca, and as you shall see later, the type of support and commitment they gave to the Muhajireen of Mecca. So you got the Muhajirun of Mecca, the immigrants who left everything. We will see how that is going to happen for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, because Mecca was no longer conducive for the da'wah at the time. Mecca was no longer hospitable and welcoming. And so you shall see how Rasulullah ﷺ was very much forced out of Mecca. And prior to leaving Mecca, he sent Mus'ab ibn Umair, the young Sahabi, who, if you recall, was a very affluent, spoiled, in today's lingo we say he was a spoiled brat before he became Muslim. He used to dress in the most beautiful clothes, apply the most beautiful perfume. He was spoiled to the extent that it is said, that's before he became Muslim, that he would wake up in the morning and breakfast is right next to his head. Now if you happen to be one of those people, then there is a good precedent for you in the history of Islam. If you're one of those people who still wake up in the morning and you need to have breakfast ready made for you, then think of Mus'ab. He used to have that, you see, but then when he converted to Islam, his mother deprived him of all of that, and you know, we talked about that at length. But because of the sacrifices Mus'ab made, and because he ultimately had to give up, not willingly, he had no choice, give up all the affluence, all the luxuries that he used to have, all the beautiful clothes, because it was all taken away from him. His mom gave him the ultimatum: you either leave Islam or you will have nothing. And so he made the right choice, that is Islam. Now the reward for Mus'ab was the ultimate reward, where Allah Ta'ala chose him to be the first ambassador of Islam. And he was sent a year in advance of the Prophet's migration to Medina. And so what Mus'ab did, by the time Rasulullah ﷺ got to Medina, Islam had already entered every house of Medina. It doesn't mean that everybody in Medina had become Muslim, but it means if there is at least one Muslim in every house of Medina by the time the Prophet arrived in Medina. Imagine. And that was the beginning of the great Fath. Because there is later, we shall see the Fath of Mecca, which happens 2 years before the death of Rasulullah ﷺ. That is 21 years after the beginning of his da'wah mission. That is the Fath, that we know, the Fath of Mecca. But what the ulama say, Fath al-Futuh, the Fath of all Futuh, the real Fath, which opened a door or a window through which da'wah now would spread to the four corners of the world, it was through Medina. And the lucky people were the people of Medina, Al-Ansar. Now remember, Al-Ansar, Al-Khaws, who are the two dominant tribes of Al-Ansar, the supporters, the helpers they call them, those who housed the immigrants. And as you shall see later what they gave them. The Ansar, Al-Aws, Al-Khazraj, their origin is from Yemen. And the Yemenis are by nature very gentle and very soft people. And Rasulullah ﷺ had already told us about the people of Yemen. قال الإيمان يماني والحكمة يمانية. He said, Iman is Yemeni. Faith is of the people of Yemen. And wisdom is of the people of Yemen. Sadly, what's happening to Yemen now at the hands of Muslims, the destruction of Yemen, sadly. Because this is how the enemies of Islam destroy Islam, by making Muslim turn against another Muslim. This idea of divide and conquer, which continues unabated since the colonizers artificially drew boundaries to separate our nations, to make the Palestinian hate the Jordanian, and the Lebanese hate the Syrian, and the Syrian hate the Lebanese, and the Pakistani hate the Indian, and the Indian hate the Pakistani, etc. Artificial boundaries. And they created nationalism, which is a cancerous disease that really it ate the Ummah from inside. Al-Ansar, the helpers or the supporters being of Yemen, are gentle in nature. And you continue to see this until today. Anyone who has been to Hajj, anyone, no doubt, regardless of who they are, you go to Mecca and then you go to Medina and you feel the difference. You feel the difference. You feel the gentleness and the softness of the Madani people, as opposed to the more harsh approach and the attitude and the demeanor of the Meccans. Until today, subhanallah, you see that. So then Rasulullah ﷺ had sent Mus'ab, and a year of effort he brought a number of people, and we saw how he brought especially two of the foremost leaders of Al-Aws wal-Khazraj, and we saw the method of da'wah. If you recall, Mus'ab ibn Umayr's method of da'wah was rather, in our esteem nowadays, too simplistic, but it was most effective. If you recall, when the chiefs, these two chiefs of Aws and Khazraj, came very angry actually, looking for Mus'ab ibn Umayr and his companion. They heard that Mus'ab ibn Umayr is inviting people to Islam. And so they went to them one by one, very angry, to stop them from giving da'wah, from inviting to Allah. And Mus'ab was sitting with his companion, and as soon as they saw these chiefs come to them, they didn't react. They weren't angry, they weren't upset, they weren't screaming and shouting, they weren't rude. And they simply said to the chiefs, they said, look, if you would like, sit down and we will talk to you, that's it. But if you don't want, that's fine, you go your way. And they sat down and they gave them very simple but profound da'wah. And the ulama say, therefore, it's not what comes out of the mouth when you're giving da'wah, it's not what comes out of the mouth that has the greatest impact on the recipient, but it's what comes from the heart that has the greatest impact on the heart of the recipient. Absolutely. And therefore, the more qana'at, the more conviction you have in what you are preaching or inviting to, the more it would have a resounding impact on the recipient. So then the people of Medina now, as they had become Muslim, or many of them had become Muslim, they became quite concerned for the safety of Rasulullah ﷺ in Mecca. So a group of about 70 or 75, the narrations vary, 70 and 73 men and 2 women from Medina who had become Muslim, and they are of people of status and reputation and recognition among their people, decided, we will go to Mecca to meet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and do a bay'ah with him, a pledge. And this becomes now the second bay'ah, or al-aqabatu thaniya or al-bay'ah thaniya. Remember, there was already a group of Medina, there were a very few people, men, who came to Mecca. Rasulullah sallam searched them out, found them, gave them da'wah, they accepted Islam, and they went back to Medina. And that's when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent Mus'ab behind them or after them to continue teaching and continue giving da'wah. That was known as al-aqaba al-ula or al-bay'ah al-ula, the first pledge of allegiance with the Rasulullah sallam. Now 70 or 73 men including 2 women, decided to go because they felt Rasulullah ﷺ is no longer safe in Mecca. And we must give him all the necessary support he needs. So let us go and meet him in Mecca. They went to Mecca and they chose the season. The season was the season of Hajj. Now the Arabs before Islam were also performing Hajj, but not in the way we perform Hajj now. But the sites like Mina and Arafah and Muzdalifah, and they were still the same, being used the same, because this was the remnants or the remainings of the teachings of Ibrahim alayhi salatu salam, which the Arabs have already inherited. But like with worshipping Allah Ta'ala, they inherited that from Ibrahim, but they believed in Allah. The mushrikun of Arabia, the pagans or the idolaters of Mecca, of Arabia, they were not atheists. They were not mulhid, atheists. They believed in Allah, but they associated partners with Allah. The message of Ibrahim, by the time it got to them in the early 7th century, had already been adulterated, had already been changed. So they said, we know there is Allah, but we can only go to Allah through those idols. Allat, Al-Uzza, Hubal, etc. Which is an interesting note or difference between today's modern society, where the latest census in Australia shows people don't believe anymore. Ilhad, there is atheism, right? And the Arabs who believed but had associated partners with Allah. Interestingly, during that time, there weren't people who were agnostic. Agnostic is somebody who believes but doesn't know what they believe in. They know there is a power. They know there is a power, but they don't know which power that is. And they call those the agnostic, one who is unsure. One who is unsure. They say, yes, I know something, there is a superpower, but I don't know what this superpower is. Then you have the atheist, one who willingly says and conscientiously says, I deny the existence of that power. They say there is no, na'udhu billah, there is no God, which in itself is a belief system. There is no God, that's a belief system. But that belief system says there is no God. The opposite of that belief system is the belief system that says there is Allah. There is a God, Allah Azza wa Jal. The mushriks of Arabia, because they were inherited the faith through Ibrahim alayhi salam and subsequent prophets, had that remnants or inherited that, but by the time it got to them, and because they between the last Nabi Isa alayhi salam and Rasulullah, there was a period of almost 600 years, the message had already been diluted. Equally with the Hajj rites. So they were doing Hajj, but they were sometimes circumambulating or going around the Kaaba doing tawaf unclothed and worshipping the 360 idols which were in the Kaaba. But it's a busy season and people are occupied. So strategically, Rasulullah ﷺ chose, or rather those 72 men sent a message to Rasulullah ﷺ secretly that we want to meet you on the last day of Hajj. And the last day of Hajj is the busiest because people are now thinking of moving and leaving. But they said to him, we will meet you at the last day of Hajj, but the last third of the night when everybody's asleep. Look at the precautions, which is important, because some people think that if you have tawakkul on Allah, if you have faith in Allah and you rely on Allah, then you don't need to take precautions. It'll all work out. And that actually fundamentally goes against the ulama's understanding of tawakkul. Tawakkul on Allah, relying on Allah, does not mean you don't become strategic and you don't plan. But rather, as we said last time, the ulama defined tawakkul as, if anyone remembers, 2 words. They defined tawakkul using 2 beautiful words. Amal and amal. That's tawakkul. Amal and amal. You do and you have hope. That's tawakkul. That's reliance on Allah. You do what you can and you have hope in Allah Ta'ala. The opposite of that is not tawakkul, it's known as tawakkul. Tawakkul. Tawakkul means do nothing, don't take any means, and think it's all going to work out. When Umar radiallahu anhu ibn al-Khattab was Amir al-Mu'mineen and was in the masjid, and he saw a group of young men sitting in the corner, again and again he sees them there every salah. He said, who are those young people? Do they not work? Don't they have a job? They said, no, they always in the masjid, they don't have a job. So he went to them. He said, what do you do here every day? You don't have a job? They said, no, Allah will feed us. So he took his staff, he always carried a staff with him, and he whacked them. He says, go and work. The sun does not rain gold and silver. Move. Right? He says, move. So they said to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and you notice this throughout the Seerah, despite the fact that this is Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and the full support of Allah is with him, and despite the fact that his tawakkul on Allah is 100%, and despite the fact that his iman in Allah Ta'ala is unparalleled and unequal, he always took precautions. He always planned and he always strategized. And this is fundamentally the ultimate reason is not because Rasulullah ﷺ needs to, but so that he leaves no excuse for anyone who comes after him to say, well, Rasulullah ﷺ did not do anything, I'm not going to do anything. But rather so people can take him as a qudwa, as a role model, to say if he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even he alayhi salatu wasalam, had to take all the precautions and the necessary measures, and he had to strategize, then we are to do the same. When these 72 came, and the other interesting thing with the second bay'ah, not everybody knew about it, even the Muslims. The only people who knew about it was Al-Abbas, the uncle of Rasulullah ﷺ, who wasn't a Muslim yet, but he had full trust in Rasulullah ﷺ, and Rasulullah ﷺ had full trust in him, and he went with Rasulullah ﷺ to protect him. The other person who knew about it was Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and Ali, who were keeping a watch while Rasulullah ﷺ was meeting. They were keeping a watch to say if there is danger coming. They were in different spots, keeping a watch to say, but nobody else knew. Again, the lesson from that is that not everything that needs to be done should be spoken about. You don't just go and, and this is one failure of the Muslims today, is that when we want to, do something, if the whole world has to know. Right? Some ulama say you should work like the white ants, the termites. You work without bringing any attention to yourself. Effectively. Nowadays, with the modern world that we live in, everybody wants to put everything out there. And I said previously, even I have a problem personally when somebody converts to Islam. Even without their permission, we'll video that and go and put it in social media for the whole world to see, not knowing that might even have a huge negative impact on this new convert, because his parents may not know, or if they see it, they'll feel, So we have to be very mindful, very tactful in what we do and what we say. And you see that in the life of Rasulullah ﷺ. So not everybody knew about this meeting, which was going to be a decisive meeting. So then he met with them, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Jabir bin Abdullah, who was there, he said, when he was in Medina, he said, we will not leave Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam yutradu fi jibali Makkah wa yukhaf. When they were in Medina, said, we will not abandon Rasulullah, leave him alone by himself in Mecca, running scared from what the people of Mecca might do to him, and we shall go and give him our support. Then when they met with Rasulullah sallam, they said, we are here to give you full support, but because the mission is difficult and what might come next could cost them pretty much their lives, so then Rasulullah sallam made the following bay'ah with them, the words of this allegiance. He said, تبايعوني على السمع والطاعة في النشاط والكسل. Number one, if you want to go ahead with this allegiance, then you must pledge that you will listen and obey to me in times of when you are full of energy, when you're full of enthusiasm, and when you are feeling lazy. There's no excuse. He wants to make sure that they are fully dedicated and that they know exactly what they are getting themselves into. He says, تبايعوني على السمع والطاعة في النشاط والكسل. You must pledge that you will obey me as a messenger of Allah when you are feeling energetic and when you are feeling lazy. والنفقة في العسر واليسر. And you pledge that you will spend in the path of Allah when things are easy and things are difficult. You spend in the path of Allah times of ease and the times of difficulties. وعلى الأمر بالمعروف, and that you pledge to order the good. والنهي عن المنكر, and that you must prevent evil. وأن تقولوا في الله لا تخافون في الله لومة لائم, and that when you speak the truth, you don't fear anyone except Allah تبارك وتعالى. وعلى أن تنصروني فتمنعوني إذا قدمت عليكم مما تمنعون منه أنفسكم وأزواجكم وأبنائكم. And that you pledge that you will support me and that you will protect me against any harm that might come upon me, just as you would protect your wives and your children and your family from any harm that comes upon you. In return for that, وَلَكُمُ الْجَنَّةِ, I promise you Jannah. Allahu Akbar. It's a bargain, it's a tijara. This is a trade with Allah Azza wa Jal. And the best trade is the trade with Allah Ta'ala. Allah says in the Quran, إِنَّ اللَّهَ اشْتَرَى مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Allah has purchased from the believers their selves and their wealth in return for Jannah. Of course, the interesting thing here is that ourselves and our wealth belong to whom in the first place? It belongs to Allah in the first place. But as if Allah Ta'ala says, I am giving you a temporary ownership of the things that I have possession of. I give you temporary ownership, and I want to make a trade with you with that which I have given you in any case, that if you use that for Allah's sake, the wealth that I have given you and the selves that I have given you for Allah's sake, then Allah will promise you Jannah. And this is what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to the Ansar. Before they committed themselves, the youngest of the group, a man called As'ad bin Zurara, he stood up and he said to his people, he says, before you make a pledge, I want you to know this is a very serious matter, and that if you make this pledge, you make it fully, with full awareness, conscientious of the decision and of the outcome. Because wallahi, after this day you will be fought in the most vicious of ways by the people of Mecca. So know that before you pledge. Fair enough. clear transaction. In other words, everybody knows what they are getting into. You want Jannah, this is what you give in return. But know that it's not going to be easy. As Rasulullah sallallahu himself will be fought, as he sallallahu alaihi wasallam will be challenged, you will equally be challenged. They all responded by saying, we know exactly what we are getting into, and wallahi, they said, after this bay'ah, we will protect Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam with everything that we have. And as far as we can, we will not allow any harm to come upon him sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And they did exactly that. In fact, one of the women who was there, who made that bay'ah with Rasulullah sallam, because of her sincerity and the pledge she made with Rasulullah sallam, she fought in the Battle of Uhud. She went with her husband, and she was the one who was going around giving water to the injured. And then in Uhud, as you know, in the initial part of Uhud, the Sahaba were winning and Rasulullah sallam, and then they got defeated. And when Rasulullah sallam was attacked, she came and she stood in front of Rasulullah sallam to defend him alayhi sallam. She was blocking Rasulullah sallam with her own physical body. And they said she was wounded with more than 17 wounds because of the pledge she made in this pledge that we will defend you, Rasulullah. And this is how the women upheld that pledge, let alone the men. The women. She went and she was giving water to the injured in the Battle of Uhud, and she was killed radiyallahu anha because of the pledge she gave. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam asked them for some very difficult things. And the message to us, of course, is that this deen is not cheap. The deen is not cheap. You want Jannah, you have to sacrifice for it. You have to sacrifice. And the reason you and I 1400 years later have deen is because of their sacrifices. We are very much standing on their shoulders. The shoulders of those men and women who made the ultimate sacrifices with their selves, their wealth, their time, their families, their houses. And that's why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said about them, he said, خير القرون قرني ثم الذين يلونهم ثم الذين يلونهم. The best of generations are mine, meaning me, Rasulullah and his companions, and then those who follow them, and then those who follow them, meaning the tabi'een and the tabi'een, the followers of the Sahaba and the followers of the followers of the Sahaba. But also Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, he said, Wallahi, a time will come when if people were to follow 1/10 of what you do to the Sahaba, he said, if they were to follow 1/10 of what you do, they will also earn Jannah. 1/10. Because we will never be able to be like them. The ulama say, and I'll finish with this because the time is late and we can continue inshallah later. They say that the greatest of ulama that came after the Sahaba, the greatest man or woman that came after the Sahaba will never equal even the dust that was on the feet of these Sahaba. Why? Because Allah Ta'ala gave them the shahada in the Quran, the testimony, the witness. رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ وَرَضُوا عَنْهُ. Allah is pleased with them and they are pleased with Allah. And Allah promised them Jannah. We don't know that about ourselves. And some of those Sahaba, like the people of Badr who fought Badr, they were the select of the Sahaba. And about them Rasulullah says, Allah Ta'ala said after the Battle of Badr to the people who took part in Badr, go and do what you want, Allah had forgiven you. That is their maqam, that is their status. That's why, my brothers and sisters, when we read about the Sahaba, the companions, both men and women, we do so because Allah Ta'ala was, so that we can become inspired, because Allah Ta'ala was pleased with them. And remember what Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu said. He says, "Man kana mustannan falyastanna billadhina qad matu, ulaika ashabu Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wasallam." If you want to follow the way, or if you want to take anyone as a role model, then follow those who died. They were the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. فَإِنَّ الْحَيَّ لَا تُؤْمَنُ عَلَيْهِ الْفِتْنَةِ. Because the living, you can't guarantee that they will not be tested and fail in the test. The living, regardless of who the living is, but they died and they passed the test. فَاعْرِفُوا لَهُمْ فَضْلَهُمْ. So you should know their virtue. فَاعْرِفُوا لَهُمْ فَضْلَهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ كَانُوا وَاللَّهِ أَفْضَلَ هَذِهِ الْأُمَّةِ. Because by Allah, they were the best of this ummah. أبرها قلوبا وأعمقها علما وأقلها تكلفا. Because they had the most righteous of hearts, the deepest of knowledge of deen, and the least to do with this material world. فَتَخَلَّقُوا بِأَخْلَاقِهِمْ. So follow their character and conduct and be like them, because they pass the test. And that's why you see what they do, what they've done with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. طيب, barakallah fikum. The hour is late and I don't want to take more of your time. We will continue. جزاكم الله خير. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون. سلام على المرسلين. الحمد لله رب العالمين. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.